Hello and welcome back to the AI hybrid stage of Rise of AI. We are now talking about AI solutions, and we have a nice lineup for you of 10 companies that are using AI in their everyday work, improving their customer products. And I will probably have you here for about 2 hours. So I hope you have eaten well, you're prepared, you've been to the toilet. And starting off with something very, very important here in the Berlin ecosystem. I think we had yesterday Adrian Locher, we had Rasmus Rode today both from Merantix. And I'm very glad to have Nicole Büttner here, Dr. Nicole Büttner, sorry, Nicole, who is the CEO and co-founder of Merantix Labs. And she does everything related to AI for those other two. So she actually knows how to do it. And she will tell us now what Mirantix Labs is doing, how they're applying AI. Nicole, you have 10 minutes, and then we do Q&A.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm actually not Dr. Nicole, but we always call Rasmus Dr. AI, so maybe that's where that's coming from. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. I want to talk to you about Merantix Labs. We're basically the external machine learning department for companies. And we often, little glitch, exactly. So we are basically the portfolio company of Merantix that brings the Merantix knowledge on data-driven business models and machine learning into companies, right? Rasmus and Adrian have talked a lot about us. We are basically not building a product company that that is focused on one industry vertical, but we are a service company that works together with our partners from different areas on their concrete machine learning issues and challenges and also opportunities. I think, you've already seen what an amazing team we have. I think it's important to say that the expertise that we have spans mainly 3 domains. We are very heavily specialized in natural language processing and also in computer vision, and are rapidly looking also at the forecasting space and reinforcement learning. And I wanted to bring to you maybe a few examples of what we do there actually. So in the natural language processing field, right, we, for example, work with one of the Magic Circle law firms and help them automate legal compliance topics, right? These are often issues where it can be tricky maybe to actually employ a product that you can find in the market, and it's a little bit easier for you to work with a service provider that builds something that's bespoke for your systems and that really can be integrated very well in existing workflows. As you know, the legal domain is quite specific and also quite special in its workflows. We, for example, also look at fields like customer product reviews. This we do, for example, for consumer electronics platforms. And we also, for example, work in the pharmaceutical sector, where they are trying to sort of automate how to deal with new side effects and new alerts for side effects. In the computer vision department, I think my colleague Clemens will also talk about CS Search later on today and about the great solution that they have in the computer vision department. We, for example, focus on things in the computer vision, some medical use cases. So we, for example, look at dermahistopathology samples and basically build classifiers on how to easier diagnose skin cancer. We also are, for example, working on products and like end-to-end solutions to look at the future of, for example, in warehouses, how to look at returned goods when you're thinking about that whole supply chain. And I'm very happy that we're also very active in the forecasting space. So we're, for example, working with manufacturing companies. This is very widely applicable to a lot of SMEs and producing companies all over Germany and Europe, where you have to basically take a product sketch or a prototype sketch and actually translate it into real production environments. And a lot of the companies we're working with are facing shortages in qualified labor in this space. And we're very happy to assist them with partly automating this approach and helping them basically produce these parts much quicker and translate these part specifications much quicker into actual production descriptions. So how does a laser or how is a specific part sort of produced from a metal block, for example, in subtractive case. Yeah, so I mean, these are some of the cases that I talked about. I think one other case that's really interesting as well is optimized design of experiments. So there we, for example, work in the chemical industry and help looking at how to make the R&D efforts more efficient. So basically reduce the number of experiments you physically have to run to find a new composition for a new material, which is very interesting and also applicable, for example, in the pharma sector. So those are, for example, things that we do. I think you will hear about a lot of cool solutions today, and right, a lot of companies out there. I know some of you are making AI makers, some of you are talent, some of you are actually corporates, and we are here basically. Mirantix Labs mission is basically when you think about should we buy or make, right? Should we outsource something or should we build it in-house? That we help you bridge that gap. I mean, and also make some of the companies more AI ready. We're working with the University of St. Gallen on this together on a basically AI canvas. As we're seeing at the moment, a lot of companies are experimenting around machine learning use cases. So they're already trying out things, running prototypes, building POCs, but it's really challenging for some of the companies to actually scale this and translate this into sustainable business models, into really long-term deployment and high sort of scalable business value. And that's why we've decided to build this canvas and to help companies basically navigate this process and really harness the full power of AI in a very systematic fashion, focused on 3 pillars. One is the business pillar that you see in green. So set out with a clear purpose. The second one is focused on organization. How do you build and cultivate teams and setups in which you can actually also quickly build and iterate on machine learning products? And the third pillar is technology and infrastructure and data. So what is actually a good setup in this fast-paced world of moving tools to actually set yourself up for success? And this is sort of one tool that where we really have a high ambition to help existing organizations to really understand and really help them to harness the full value of machine learning models. The second passion, I would say, right, is also around. This didn't load. That's not good. So I don't know. I will describe it. I will just stay on the canvas slide. So a second thing that we're doing, and I know Rasmus has talked about our campus as well, is we believe that to really transform business models, right, you have to think also in your strategic supply chain. You have to think on how are you actually as a company integrating in this whole universe, in your whole industry, and maybe even into other industries, and how can you actually sort of lift your gaze away just from the data you're producing to kind of what is the actual value creation process of your whole industry, of your whole value chain. And to this purpose, we also create data ecosystems and AI ecosystems also on our campus in Berlin, together with companies who belong to the same ecosystem. So one could, for example, be car manufacturing, right? You could imagine a lot of different companies in the value chain of car production, from tire makers, from infrastructure providers, right? All around this sort of topic of mobility, working together and creating impactful use cases. So it actually, we're starting to think about this, talking to tire manufacturer who have some very valuable data on what they're doing in their tire production. But how much more impactful would it be to actually link this data to other data points that are coming out of a car and really create new value propositions and use cases to the driver, to infrastructure operators, etc. And for this, we have to, I think, very strongly think in ecosystems of data and also value creation. Same could be, for example, applicable for a domain like building or construction, right? So yeah, one message, we have a very strong machine learning and data-driven business model competency. We want to empower companies, second message, to harness this and to really make themselves AI ready and become data-driven companies themselves. And the third thing is we're here to build a data and data-driven machine learning ecosystem and bring together different players from industry and from the startup world. I think I'll make a full stop here and wait for some of your questions.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Nicole. And sorry for already promoting you. I'm still dreaming of my doctor, so that's maybe the case. So thanks a lot. One question, maybe coming like a typical venture capital question, sorry. But since the space of, let's call it AI consultancy, and please shoot me for that word, but it's getting more crowded and crowded. BCG has one, McKinsey, and many others. What's the special position of Mirantix Labs, or special edge, maybe, as you might call it?
Thank you for this question, actually. So I would say traditional consulting companies have a lot of strengths, right? They're traditional strengths that they're coming from. Fundamentally, though, I would say they're not organizations that are built to deliver code. I think they're moving there, right? They were built to deliver, I don't mean this respectfully, PowerPoint presentations, very impactful ones and inside industries. We're truly a tech, we truly have tech DNA, and we know how to build tech companies, right? And when you look also at retaining talent and staying on the edge of these technological developments, I think Mirantix has a much better starting position than some of these bigger consulting companies. They have probably other advantages, and I wouldn't discard working together with them, but I think we have different strengths that we play to.
And I think that you touched a very important point. What I see in our portfolios, the larger the companies get with their AI models and products, it's getting quite boring for at least data scientists, because it's about stability. It's not about new things. So who are you looking for at Mirantix Labs? What kind of people?
Yeah, so we're definitely looking for people who want to stay at the edge of research, right? We want to be pushing that frontier. And we're looking for people who basically want to see different problems and think about the solutions and conceptualize those solutions. And we then help companies, right, implement that and deploy that and actually translate that into a valuable product or solution for them. Ultimately, however, I think, also that companies want to and also have to build midterm their own capabilities, right, in-house. So, we will always be kind of pushing at the frontier. And now you can say it's a push or pull thing, right? Depending on whether we're in front or behind, or maybe sometimes from both sides. But trying to keep basically companies on their toes, bringing them the newest research insights and translating that into actually workable solutions that you can actually use when you're working in a back office job, or when you're a truck driver, or when you're working in a law firm.
So final question, continuing on that point. So what is on the edge? So let's look at the next year. What do you see will happen in AI, maybe in terms of new models, new approaches? What is the edge?
I'm sure a lot of people have touched on this OpenAI framework. We see a lot happening in the NLP space. And I think, OpenAI's new GPT-3 is really impressive, however, how are you actually going to use this as a company? So with this fascinating technology and also this breakthrough, you actually have to find real applications. I think and I would say 2-3 hurdles that are there and that we're looking to solve technologically are, for example, small data sets. So how do you actually apply these great models, right? I mean, GPT-3 was trained on 175 billion parameters, so that's kind of, I would say, qualifies as large. How do you actually make this workable when you're in a company and you know you don't have this kind of amount of data, right? And that's actually the challenge that people have. You know, you see this in theory. Oh yes, it's supposed to look like this, balanced data set, large, and so on. And then you look at your own data and you're like, So for example, when we look at working with law firms, right, that's, for example, one of the challenges you have. You have very small data sets or maybe low incidence problems. So looking at synthetic data, for example, I think will be highly interesting in how to create valuable synthetic data sets around specific domains and not just sort of scrolling the internet. That's one thing. And I also think in manufacturing, actually, this example that I looked at, that I was presenting sort of in this whole design of experiment, reinforcement learning space about how to reduce the number of attempts it takes you to calibrate a machine, for example, to do pharma research, right? These are all really very impactful use cases, and I think they will bring a lot of value to a lot of industries.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Nicole. And everybody who's interested in that, please give her a call. You can apply your Rise of AI discount code. Hopefully. I guess you guys are not cheap. Thanks for being here. And next up on the stage, since we spoke so much about AI regulation and also people trusting or maybe mistrusting AI, I'm very glad that Stefan Hinz is here, coming from Adlershof in Berlin. I just read you recently got accepted to NVIDIA, who is supporting you, and Stefan will tell us how he and his team enable trust in AI.
Thank you. Yeah, well, so first of all, thank you, Fabian, and thank you, Nicole, for this fantastic pitch. Thank you for this opportunity. Yeah, my name is Stefan Hinze. Who is Stefan Hinze? Stefan Hinze is one of the 4 founders from the neurocat. I have a strong economical and management and sales background. The other 2 founders have a strong mathematical background, and yeah, and the 4th founder was responsible to pay the bills in the beginning. And yeah, I'm very happy that we are seeing the neurocat is growing. Yeah, I say we came from the streets. That means we grow up organically. So we have no funding. Our first mission was to understand the demand. I think that's a very, very important experience to understand the market. And yeah, and our mission is to enable quality, safety, security for AI. Very proud to have Tarek now on board as a new CTO and a new board member, and Joachim and Matteo, a lot of exciting people. I think we are close to 40. I see 36. So yeah, and we're working in Adlershof. Adlershof, that means science at work. What means science at work? They're doing a lot of science and transform it into an economy, in a economy. And that means we try to bring new stuff into the market, and and you're seeing we already published papers, CVPR. I think there's now a neuro IPS paper outside. We have 5 patents pending still. And what's our goal? Usually our goal is to solve the key problem in AI deployment. That is the robustness, the trustworthiness, and safety, security, compliance, and explainable. And that's the nature of itself. Every startup like to solve problems. Yeah, that is how it is. And what's the problem? Felix discovered it 3-4 years ago. And we need to think a little bit, if you understand AI, it is input, processing, output. And an AI is only so good as its input. And what happens if the input is being manipulated, or sensors are not working properly, or noise is present in the environment? I tell you what happens. That. And we already know that, and that is not a funny story. We know people lost their life, and it is most safety security problem, a robustness problem. And and I have other stories as well. So maybe you remember In the past, there was a chatbot from Facebook. He developed his own language, or the chatbot from Microsoft became racism. I remember last year in London, there was the first court file. It was a trading AI, and this trading AI, the users don't understand how this AI will work, and they lost money. And and the reason was, if you don't understand the system, how you can cover the risks from your clients. And so simple is it. All these challenges we tried to solve. Yesterday, we have no reliable test beds. We have close research solutions to analyze the AIs. We have no really methods how we can solve the robustness problem, how we can understand the decision boundary, and a lot of black fields in this research AI field. And now I have the good news. Of course, today we have great solutions, and neurocat challenged this research topics, and we have now reliable testbed. We have the solutions ready to make the AI robust, make them safe, secure. You see in the automotive driving, we're working strong together with certification industry, with audit industry, with operation industry, with the developer, the whole food chain, and the insurance company in the end of the day want a risk assessment. All these challenges you can solve with one solution. It's industry agnostic. It's unlimited robustness stresses. It's tremendous. We solved the robustness problem with agnostic to the differences. In the same time, we increased the performance. All the AI researchers know what that means. So we have our neurocat labs. We start there. We make the services. We have our solution who analyze the models, the data, full automatically, and then improve it. Just press the button, wait, buy a little bit compute, and become certificated. We have success stories, of course, with Volkswagen together. We enable safety security not only in the automotive sector. We have much more ML who will be deployed in the cars. I'm very happy to start next year with an explainable AI project. Thank you, Claudia, for your support on this side. Telecom, we're talking to BMW Munich Re. There we're working on risk evaluation. Of course, the consulting companies are interested in trust in AI here, and we're strong connected with auditors to build on a certification. And maybe I want to go back. You need to understand that it's not only a research field, that is a high scalable, commercial, ready to commercial use solution. That means you can run millions of stress tests, and we have ready millions of stress tests. One of the big difference between Google and neurocat. It's stable. Bam, how much money? It depends how much money you have. So one of the first highlights is our text generator. That gives us the opportunity to generate millions of stress tests. That means in the past, maybe you remember, we have 50 to 100 stress tests. And with our solution, we have a bunch of billions of stress tests. And so that means we can not only analyze the AI system in the best way, we can improve the system in the same way. So that means that is agnostic, that is real time. You can deploy it on-prem, and then you have a safe, secure solution. No hackers have no chance, no noise anymore. And that's another highlight, is our what if from the explainable AI pillar. Our solution is more flexible. Maybe you have heard from the Google solution. We have still a patent on that too. You can use that, I can say, in a brighter way. It gives you local and global explanation here, and I'm very happy to see what will come next year. So this solution gives you in one point, or in one platform, all the tools what you need to become trustworthy, to understand your algorithm, to improve that, and to monitor them. If you see the slides, you will see how we are situated in the food chain of the AI. You're doing in the beginning something with your data, then you train, you know this iteration, and here we have our test bed, and in the end of the day, during the runtime, we have our improvement solution. I call it Firewall, or Explainer for AI. Yeah, why came the clients to us? Why is they choosing? First, of the motivation of the automotive industry. They don't want to drive millions of miles. They don't want to run the systems for thousands of hours. And we analyze automatically the edge cases, enable functional safety, be ahead of the AI compliance curve, and a lot of companies we are working with. And what's our roadmap? Our roadmap for the next 3 months is to implement the robustness evaluation. Hey, what's so funny? You guys laughing there? Is all good? Okay, we can move to turn to red. Maybe I'm doing something wrong here. So we have a threat model selection, the version 2 robustness scores, and finally we enable RNN architectures to improve the robustness and the comprehensibility. One of our success stories with Volkswagen, our clients very happy to work with us. They're saying we leading the fields here. Everybody is saying he's the best. So of course we are always the best, or already the best. How you get that solution? It's very easy, of course. Go on the website, just register your interest, fill up your email, and press the button, and then we can talk about the pricing later. Thank you. And we are 40 seconds too early, so if you have any questions, feel free, please.
Thanks a lot, Stefan. Thanks a lot. So I'm just checking here. Okay. So first question for you. We spoke a lot about explainable AI. We spoke a lot about regulation and understanding those models. And you're actually telling us now that you can do something of that. Sounds very revolutionary. Is it to very specific cases that you are solving, or what are you covering exactly?
So thank you for this great question. Yeah, that's what I have forgotten. We are definitely industry agnostic. We are input agnostic. It doesn't matter. Is it a speech recognition? Is it a vision system? In the end of the day, you have always the same methods, and it's always a matter of the plots, how you plot the problem, how you will plot the reports. But the analysis methods and mathematics behind is always the same. And so we are agnostic to everything, to task agnostic, input, industry, vertical, doesn't matter to us. We have a lot of experience since 4 years in this.
And you have very reputable customers there, and obviously they probably also have their own data scientists. So, of the audience listening, who would be the best customer for you? What are the people? Are they the ones that are building their own models? Are the ones that take more the off-the-shelf ones?
Yeah, customer is a good question. First of all, customer is a king. Every customer is welcome. It's very interesting to work with different stakeholders, in different knowledge level. You have sometimes guys like me who maybe understand the wording AI, but then you have technical nerds who can only talk with our technical guys. So, but usually the good client is a client who is willing to pay. and
Never say no. You always
okay, cool. Hopefully it's helpful.
Yeah. Good. And are you also giving advice how to improve models? So are you just detecting something, or are you improving?
Yeah, that's another good question. We transform actually from a service company and a SaaS company. So in the past, of course, we was doing a lot of consulting. We talked to the research guys and say, hey, doing it this way and move on this. And finally now we have here strong partners like Bearing Point, T-Systems, a lot of consulting companies who now help us on this, and we just deliver the test bed and the monitor bed and the improvement solution. But that's our mission, to get it safe, to get it trustworthy, and in the right political meaning.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for being here. And I guess if any customer wants to contact you, they can use the app.
Yeah, feel free. I'm very happy, and thank you. And again, thank you, Fabian, and to the
Stefan,
team. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. That was Trust in AI. Next, I think that's a very nice follow-on topic about this. We have Alexander Stojanovic, I hope I pronounced it correctly, thank you, of AVA, and they simply claim, or somebody referred to them as the Palantir of Europe, so I think that's about it, about enough of introduction. Please welcome to the stage, Alexander.
Where's the clicker? The presenter. Thank you. Thanks so much. All right. Thank you. Thank you for being here. So I'm here today to give you like a quick overview on Ava and what we do. Could you please restart the timer? Yes, perfect. So I have a little bit like the time inside. Now, before going a little bit deeper, like into explaining like what Ava is about, I would like to quickly show you a video which will give you a little bit of background how all of this has actually started.
You're watching a narrative this morning.
We begin with breaking news. A hit-and-run accident in Austin, Texas, as the town hosts the hugely popular South by Southwest Tech and Media Conference.
2 people are dead and 24 are injured after a car plowed into a crowd. Police say the driver was a drunken driving suspect being
chased by police, so the video is probably not working perfectly. But what happened there was actually during my stay in Austin 2014, I witnessed actually the senseless death of many people, and many more people have been injured during this incident. And it was actually on my way back from Austin to Germany where I figured out that that this was not just frustrating, but actually mind-boggling. That in a country and in a town where everything was connected, like Austin, where the police cars have telemetry, where cameras everywhere. And during South by Southwest, you have everybody like running around like with a smartphone and doing videos and pictures. Still, there was no technology, there was no bridge to connect all of this information to detect this pattern about what was about going to happen, even though the information was there. So also after I returned, looked at it in retrospective, it was possible. Alone from the data that was actually there, you could have prevented like this event, this incident, this accident, by actually giving warning to people. The only thing that was really missing was this bridge. So being there and coming back, like I sat together with my co-founder Sascha Knopp, and we set off to deploy cutting-edge data technologies and AI to solve this particular problem and to create like a data fusion platform and artificial intelligence for a safe world. By tackling this problem, we actually very quickly came to the conclusion that this is much more than just about like creating a set of technologies that connects AI methods, for example, natural language processing and pattern recognition and machine learning, but this was really about epistemology. Or as German would say, like Erkenntnistheorie. We really had to understand what is happening when we're talking about security, safety, and risk. So what we do effectively is to look at incidents, events, things that are happening in the real world. We are parsing and taking in this information through various channels. And the core aspect of what we do is to put all of this information into one common structure. This means that regardless of whether an event, an incident, like an accident or a crime or a terror attack or a natural disaster comes through one or the other media or to the one or the other channel, our system needs to understand all of the underlying knowledge in it. So when did it happen? What happened? Where did it happen? How reliable and trustworthy is the information that we are seeing there? And that we have to put into one common standard, regardless of the source that we are looking at. And while we have solved that during an R&D project of almost 5 years before we actually started to work together with customers in markets, we created this awesome opportunity to actually bring this information all around security, safety, and risk into one common standard that defines all of the things that are related like to this type of information. This is unique. We have patented it. Now it is actually patented. It's not even pending anymore. And based on that, we can create solutions. And these solutions and interfaces are what our customers currently are using and doing. So before I go to that, just a quick introduction on what type of sources we intake. So first, of course, these are information from our customers. Customers that actually have incidents, accidents, things that are happening in their organizations, in their cities, in the places that they feel responsible for. We have public ownership data, like open data from cities, but also closed up information from police forces and other authorities. We have personal ownership. This can reach from social media data and sensors over, of course, like to professional intelligence providers, broadcasting media, social media, all of these kind of sources. They all move into AVA. They're all translated into this one common standard and made available. We do this for aspects such as crime. We do this for aspects such as fire, accidents, catastrophes, social and political risk, which is an important aspect, and of course, health risk. So we've been very, very early to see what was going on in the world when the pandemic, or what back then was still declared like an epidemic, started like in Wuhan. And we are supporting like many of our customers like in this aspect. And of course, terrorism is one aspect. Today, this is not just a presentation or a pitch, this is actually existing. AVA is an up and running technology that is scalable and very, very reliable and resilient, robust to use by some of the most advanced organizations in the world. Amongst them, we have the London City Hall and the Police of London, which uses our systems to actually improve the security safety of their citizens. We're doing some special projects with them aside, for example, in regards like to organized crimes, things that you would in Germany refer to as Clankriminalität, for example. For public transport operators, we do similar things. So you can imagine that a public transport operator of any country is confronted with a lot of things that are happening in their public transport network, not only at train stations or within trains, but also along the tracks. And when you have, like, for example, severe weather or those kind of things. So helping these organizations to actually understand what is going on, to figure out, like, from the history, what has happened, and to figure out what could that mean for the future, to get to a point like of a predictive scoring in that regard. And we do that for large corporations or NGOs or any other type of other large organizations. One of the customers that we are working very closely with is DHL worldwide. So some people don't really quickly understand like how important security is actually for the operation and the resilience of this organization, but you can really imagine that if DHL stops moving for whatever reason, because of some incident or some other severe security or risk-related event, the world stops moving. Right? Like there is no way that this world operates the way that we know when an organization like DHL is not operating. So we are helping their global security operations center and the team there to actually oversee everything that is happening on the world, ranging from piracy in the Gulf of Guinea over to border closing somewhere in Southeast Asia. So everything that actually could pose a risk to them. And they are saving a tremendous amount of time and resources by actually doing those kind of things fully automated with the help of AVA, and of course like trained by their own analysts and working like with these teams very closely together. You will find us in security situation centers. So this is, for example, how this looks like. This is actually an actual view like into our operators interface, like for professionals. We are available in the field, so also field personnel can use like our technologies and our interfaces to access this information on the go. So for example, myself, I'm always like best prepared. So when I run like through Berlin and something happens in my vicinity, my smartphone rings up and tells me, hey, listen, there is a protest going on close by, or there's a large fire or any type of incident. So that, of course, is something that is also being used like by professionals who also use like our interfaces to track the information that they see themselves. So if you imagine like a large public transport operator with 8,000, 9,000 security staff, they are using AVA not only to get information on how to best like prepare themselves and where to go when they're having like their shifts, but also to capture information that they're seeing while they're doing. And all of this has been trained further like in our system. And the fact that we are doing this really on this basic level, like really at the core, defining really a data standard and a core standard on how to manage and distribute and collaborate over security-related information, gives us the opportunity to do things that were unimaginable before. So some examples for that, of course, is your car, which in the future will tell you, don't park me here this night because there's a higher risk for vandalism, or take a different route because there is a risk like for you for theft or for carjacking, which of course is not a problem here in Berlin, rather like in other places of the world. But you have so many other use cases and business cases which heavily rely on security-related information. Just to name a few, insurances that underwrite and do like security and risk analysis, You have quant funds. We have been approached by some of the largest financial institutions of the world, which are interested like in alternative data. They want to know 30 seconds before CNN when there's a coup d'etat going on in Turkey, so they can hedge with leveraged activities against the Turkish lira and the Turkish stock market. Like things that we haven't even imagined, which could have been possible, are now possible, like through the technology and the standard that we have created and that our customers are using to actually build their ideas upon. Now, eventually we will get to the point where we get back like to where it all started, like to create something that is available really to everybody, everywhere in the world, like really a personal guardian angel, something that tells you when your situation for yourself, for your family, for the police, for the people and the places that you love is okay and how you should behave. So with that, I hope I gave you like a very broad overview and an interesting insight into Ava. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Alexander.
Thank you. Thank you, Jasper.
Yeah, I ran into that protest, by the way. I didn't have your app, so I was almost late for the conference. All the use cases you've shown, they're very broad, they're very impressive, very broad. So maybe because I read the IPO filing of Palantir, sorry, I have to refer it again, and please correct me if you're totally different. But there is a core technology underlying to all of this. That's why I imagine you have these broad cases. Can you explain that a bit more, since we're an AI conference? What is the core of it?
So the core of it is actually the part where we take information and around incidents, things that are happening, security, safety, and risk related, and put it like into this one common structure and standardize it, not only in terms like of its categorization and the indications, everything that relates around that, but also we give it like a unique ID. So you can actually talk about the same thing regardless of which organization you are. And this makes total sense if you think about it. Like in Berlin, you have the case that, for example, at the train station in Berlin, you have a consumer electronics store. So the security people of this consumer electronics store have no clue that there's a train running up like with hooligans in there, right? So they're not prepared. Whereby on the other side, in Hamburg, Altona, at the consumer electronics store of the same chain, the store manager decides to do an autograph hour with local rap giants. So they all of a sudden like have in the middle of the rush hour 500, 600 teenagers that are rioting that want to get in, and the station manager doesn't know anything. So by creating this common standard, this one common standard in the middle, we're actually creating for the first time the opportunity for organizations to collaborate with each other without actually giving away like their own data, without giving away their own information. And by putting that in the middle, this is really like the standard or the platform, if you don't want to look at it from a technological aspects. Creating all of that, of course, is very technological and very AI driven. Yes.
Yeah. And it seems very relevant, because what I learned is that it's mostly easier to have very specifically trained models for every case or every location. So you have a general model that you train for the local one?
Yes.
Okay. And do you use some modern forms of transfer learning? Is there anything that gives you an edge there? Because everybody else could follow you, take the same data, do the same thing, I imagine.
There was of course in the beginning like the conversation when we talk like really about the data product, right? Like offering Ava not only like through interfaces, but also as an API, right? So if you have access to the API, couldn't you just copy it and create the same product? I think aside like of all of the IP that we have secured, I think the biggest issue around that is that there is an ever ongoing stream of stuff that is going on. There is no minute passing without somewhere in the world stuff happening. And I mean, we see it, right? Like Ava is detecting the rocket smashing into a building in Idlib, the stabbing that is happening right now at Columbus Circle in New York, the severe weather event that is happening somewhere in Philippines. Of course, you can build that as well. But I would assume that once we have established Ava really as the standard, also like as the communication and exchange standard, that we are really facing like a as the West Coast tech community would say, like a winner takes it all situation. There is no multi-homing. It's not like I get Netflix and Amazon Prime. You will get Ava or anything else like Ava, but you won't run like 2 or 3 or 4 systems aside. So for us, deploying these technologies, being fast with that is important, but even more important is to actually establish Ava as the standard and as the structural nucleus around like where all of this information worldwide is layered around.
Sounds like a very, very nice mission. Thank you for that, Alexander.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for making this world a better place.
Thank you so much. That's exactly why we started. Thank you, Jasper. Cool. Thanks. Bye.
All right, we're continuing now with the virtual presentation from Ronnie Wuni, who is the CEO of Micropsi Industries, and we're now talking about a safer world. Ronnie can also help with that, and I think he has invented the most sensible robot, or at least the software that makes every robot more sensible. So I'm very, very glad to welcome Ronnie, and please go ahead.
Hey, thank you. So yes, I'm going to talk about plug-and-play AI for industrial robots. Why are we doing this, and why is it interesting? Right, industrial robotics is something that happens in factories, and we normally do not tend to think about what goes on in factories too much. The larger perspective is that factories production demand automation. They have done it for commercial reasons for a very long time. It just pays to automate production. In times like these, you also see that it just makes production more resilient. We've just, in this year, for the first time, I think in my lifetime, experienced scarcity of certain goods. And when you have scarcity of certain goods, it's either just delivery that's the problem, or actually production, and that was the case this time. It was partly just more demand. It was also partly it was hard to run factories because people couldn't come to work or didn't want to because they felt unsafe. So apart from just making production more resilient and fulfilling a demand for being more effective through automation, the really large perspective is that automation in the West, where we have aging, shrinking populations, is one of the very few remaining sources of growth, and that means higher living standards. So when we talk about universal basic incomes, the work still needs to be done. And the reason we can even talk about it is that more and more work goes to technology, goes to machines, goes to automation. So it's really a secular mega trend. And it is also what makes our lives so nice and makes producing in economies like the German one or the US one, where wages are high, even possible to this day. And the problem with automation is it's also extremely hard and it's extremely expensive, and you put a lot of hardware in place, which also makes it very inflexible. So we're in a situation that is comparable to IT in the 1980s, right? So there are these big industrial players and they have computers. And it's quite clear everybody should have computers going forward, but you need to buy them from IBM, and people in white coats come, and it's a project, and then you need to have experts running it. And it really feels like this is unsolvable. This is an unsolvable problem. The technology is just too complicated. The technology is too far out and too sophisticated to be run by small companies who are supposed to do something else, right? If you're an office, some people in this room might recognize what this office is there. So if you're an office, you don't want to deal with computers. You want to deal with catching criminals in this case. So the change came for IT when it went from you need to buy it from IBM and understand what you're doing to you could just buy a PC, a small product that encapsulated what you needed to have about the technology, that was easy to deploy and that was easy to run for you and wasn't at the standard of the big guys, but it was good enough so you could do it yourself. And that's where we are with automation, particularly robotic automation these days. You think about what a factory is. So that like the basic model of a factory is you put stuff in on one end and the factory reorders the stuff and the product comes out on the other end, and the product that comes out is more valuable than the stuff you put in, right? That's what factories do. So they're really about flows of material, raw materials or pre-products that go through a number of steps, and value is added in every step, ideally. And it is very hard to make every one of those steps as the material flows through the factory predictable. right? So if you want to handle it, you want to manipulate it, you want to drill in it, or whatever you're doing, you need to know where the thing is. That is expensive because you need to control every single atom of the material as it flows through your factory. It's too expensive, it's too inflexible. People don't do it. So what they do instead is they use humans because that's much easier to set up, and it's also cheaper. And this is like the lever on which you can operate with AI, because you can bring the flexibility that you need in factories through AI to actually start replacing humans, make them more resilient, make them more effective. So if you think about this in the context of robots, what you want to do is you want to find material that has somehow been delivered to a workstation, and you want to transfer it or put it into a machine or somehow manipulate it. And what you want to do technologically is just control the movement you're making with the robot directly from the camera image that you see. Now that has been hard historically, and the only reason why it hasn't happened so far is that it is so hard, and the only reason not to implement it is that you can't. And we've solved that over the course of the last year. What you see playing in your stream right now is a robot picking up wine glasses. This is a real use case somewhere in North Rhine-Westphalia where this needs to be done. And they're sort of semi-ordered on a table or in the real factory on a conveyor belt. They have been just put in some place. And the robot is supposed to find them, turn them around, and put them into some order so a cardboard box can be put on top of it. And this is what we're solving here. So the robot really makes a search movement and finds these glasses. And this has not been solved by some experts in Berlin. This isn't Micropsi Industries. This is a product that knows how to learn these things and has been trained by somebody who doesn't know anything about AI. They know a lot about glass, to find these glasses and perform the task. I'll let it catch the last one before I move on. Yes, well done. So you couldn't come up with a use case like that on a whiteboard in Berlin. Right? Turning around wine glasses isn't a large use case that robotics or even automation used to deal with. Robotics, predefined automation typically happens in automotive. We've all seen the picture. This is where you do welding and painting and palletizing. You have a lot of installations. It's a very well understood problem, and it's been solved for 40 years. The real value, the interesting applications, are things like wine glass picking, things that nobody knows about before you actually go to the factory and talk to the people and understand what they're doing there. They're completely unmapped. They're in testing, they're in assembly, they're in intralogistics, just moving stuff around. And these people all use humans for performing these tasks today, because that's their only way of dealing with the disorder that's natural. And that doesn't force them to predict where every atom is at every second. The automotive OEMs can do that. Everybody else needs humans or AI. So as you can imagine, if you are running a factory, what you're essentially doing is you are running a machine that prints money. You feed it, it does something, more value comes out on the other side, you sell it, you print money. If you're going to change anything about it, for instance, putting a robot in there instead of a human, you better make damn sure that it prints more money afterwards than it printed before you made the change. So anything in industrial automation is a long-term thing, is trust building. People will use suppliers that they have been working with for a very long time, that they know exactly will work and will help them, and that they understand will deliver the results, and that have technology that is actually reliable. And what we're doing is we're asking them to make quite a big change, right? This is unheard of, doing real-time control from sensors in your production. We do, however, believe that this is going to be the default, and we're in the process of proving to that market. And you can see, some of the players that we have proven this to and who now believe it from the automation space or from our customer space, that this is possible. And this is what they can do in the future when they realize, okay, a human is getting too expensive, or it's too shaky or too dangerous here. And we really need to use a robot that's flexible enough to solve that problem. if you want to know more about the wine glass picking use case, here's the URL. There's some documentation and the video to rewatch.
Thanks a lot, Ronny. And maybe to start with a very simple question, the robot we've seen, that's a robot that wasn't built by you. That's a normal robot.
Yes, we don't make robots. We are a software company. You can add our additional control component. That's like among us, it's just a gaming PC, right? It's a piece of intelligence that has been packaged into a controller. You hook up this controller to a robot that you already own or that you buy to put it in place in your factory for use case. And then we start to control this robot and the movement that this robot makes from sensors that we connect, typically a force torque sensor and a camera or a couple cameras.
Nice. And when you build this in-house in the factory, how long does it take? I mean, do I have to train it for months?
Not anymore. Just one KPI from what we've reached over the course of this year is we went from training times. So this is cloud training times. Yeah? So you recorded the data, you send off the data to the cloud, and it gets processed into a capability for the robot. We went from, I believe, 16 hours a year ago to 2.5, and we believe we will be at half an hour next year. So, to a degree, it doesn't even matter. The actual robot interaction time that you need for solving something like the wine glass picking use case went from, it was like 4 or 5 hours with a bit of experimenting in between to less than half an hour. Again, it doesn't really matter. The amount of time you spend on building the physical setup by far exceeds the amount of time you need to invest to actually create the AI to make the movement. So to answer your question, if you've got your hardware in place and everything's set up and your physical factory has already been changed, you can be live in a week or even less than that. Typically, it takes a couple of weeks to replan where you put the robot, where you put the safety equipment, what grip of fingers you will be using, and all these types of things.
And talking about artificial intelligence that you're using, what's actually what was maybe or will be the toughest part in AI where you created your edge? Because obviously not everybody is doing what you are doing.
Yeah, and that's sort of the if you look at just neural network models that deal with visual input, what they typically do is classify, and classification doesn't help, right? It doesn't help us at all when we get feedback that this is a wine glass. We need to know how to move relative to it, and that completely did not exist. We had to create that from scratch. There's a bit of research that you could read 5 years ago when we started, and we certainly did that. But then at some point, we just had to sit down and essentially develop the full stack for moving the robot in real time, but also doing this from a neural network that you just do not have a model on GitHub for that you can just use.
Cool. So everybody who is using robots at the moment or thinking about them, they probably should at least talk to you and figure out if micropsi can help. Thanks a lot, Ronny, for your time. And coming up next, we have Michael Brehm from i2X. And Michael once told me that he wants to use his AI to help people on dating. I think he evolved since then. So Michael, welcome.
Ich höre jetzt aber den Stream gerade nicht.
Can you hear me, Michael?
No. Hallo?
Hello, Michael. Can you hear us?
Jetzt höre ich euch. Wunderbar.
Hello. Then shoot in English, please.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. I'm Michael, founder of i2X. And I'm happy to tell you a little bit about our solution, how we use AI. And before I start with our company, I'd like to do a few general comments. And one of the headlines, or actually my favorite headline, is this one from BBC from 2018, where it says that AI will take about 800 million jobs by 2030. So the question is, should we all feel bad? Are we the new evil, bringing suffering to the world? And I tried to dig a little bit into the data, and the best proxy I could find was robots, obviously powered by software, powered by AI. And if you take the OECD harmonized unemployment rates, but also the data of robots per 10,000 employees, you find a very interesting correlation. And that is the more robots you have, the more technology you have, the lower the unemployment rate. So it's exactly the opposite of what headlines try to tell us. And the reason of that is in the end quite simple, because the more AI, the more technology you put, the higher will be your productivity. And every economist knows if you have higher productivity, normally you create also new jobs, which is amazing. Now, if you can you see me? Can you see the screens, Jasper? Hello.
Hello, hello. Ah, Michael, we can see the screen. It's only your microphone is scratching at your shirt. I think that's the only annoying
okay,
thing.
sorry.
Yeah, cool.
So the maybe the important thing is what people are only focused is this either human or machine. But the what I think is more important and even more frequent is this human plus machine. So where humans complement machines, or where AI gives human superpower. And these hybrid activities are really the very important one. And the amazing thing is that AI in this case brings like a job promotion to you without really having to work for you, because it gives you superpowers. And that's exactly at the core of I2X. We want to give people superpower by augmenting communication. We built a software layer on top of the brain to help people to have better interactions with their customers. In the core, where we focused on, if you take the whole customer lifecycle and customer acquisition funnel, lead generation totally optimized, then the activity tracking, hopefully you enter everything very carefully into your CRM, ERP system, etc. But in the middle, where the customer and the agents are on the phone, you have the box of the unknown. During calls, there are no insights, and especially there is no coaching. There is no real-time feedback. And that's exactly the problem we solve, because normally you only have like very specific calls, even if everything is recorded, where you dig in, and then after the call you can kind of see what went well and what didn't went so well. But the great thing with I2X is that we do not only record every single call, we do not only analyze every single call, but also we're giving coaching during every call, so in real time. How does that work? We tap into the call. We have like dozens, if not over 100 different integration possibilities by now, close to every telco system in the world. We transcribe it then with our own proprietary speech to text, where we have built a very advanced self-learning AI. Then this is analyzed, visualized, and in real time pushed back to our platform and to the screen of the agent, so he can guide and steer the conversation better. Now, what does real time mean? In our definition, it means less than 0.5 seconds for a full cycle to the cloud and back to the screen, because only then you're able to take the results and kind of put them into practice during your call. As a high-level picture, it looks like on the left side, you see the customer and the agent interaction. The data goes into the platform and then goes back immediately in real time to the agent, or it gives you insights and coaching post-call. But also it gives insights and recommendations to the team leads, to the trainers, so they can take this, they can agree, they can augment it, they can verify it. And then again, this data point is taken, so it can give better feedback to the agents. And this is really, it's like constantly self-learning, self-supporting circle. So with every data point, every input, the platform, the app gets better. How does it look like for the agents? They either see a tiny box on their screen, which doesn't disturb, or they, after the calls, have the possibility to get into advanced analytics. Then, and if you kind of enlarge the app, you see there's like gamification elements. It gives you certain topics or words they should say in the right order, down to should you speak faster or slower. high level, the ecosystem we've built, we really try to build a 360-degree ecosystem. It's not only the app and the agent insight platform, it aggregates to the team leads. It then aggregates to the platform, to the manager of certain locations, up to the headquarters of corporations. And no matter if you're a small company with 20 agents dispersed over a country, or a huge corporation with maybe thousands or tens of thousands of agents, it gives the management, the C-suite, the possibility to basically change the course of thousands of people with one click of a button. So if you want to push another product, have a different pricing point, want to implement some new marketing or wording, one button, you click it, and within a second, bam, goes to thousands of people. But not only are we focusing on what should be said, also we go into complex communication and emotion analytics. Things like friendliness, helpfulness. Is there an individualized conversation? Do the agent communicate on eye level with the customer? And many, many more highly emotional topics. It furthermore, a new product we are launching is that we automatically can analyze the customer satisfaction ratio, the NPS score. So instead of sending out emails after the call, just by listening to the calls directly after the call, we can tell you how happy or unhappy a certain customer was. And that gives you totally new possibilities of both analytics, but also then during the call of feedback and of guiding a call. Results so far are extremely good. We have dozens of happy clients and corporations that use I2X in telco, energy, a lot in insurance, retail, etc. Agents are super happy. We see 10, sometimes 20, 30% increase in conversion. Team leads love the product. They can do coaching a lot more efficient with 50% time saving. And it really helps them to achieve their KPIs. Managers suddenly can do true KPI-based decisions. They can A/B test things, and they also see a lot less agent attrition, which is a huge problem, especially with sales and customer service agents. And ultimately, which is most important, customers are also happier because they have faster calls, get faster to the solutions, and are served better. In these times, also very important, what about working from home? As you can imagine, a pure cloud API first solution is kind of perfect for this time. People are not left alone in their homes, but they get coaching support in real time, like an angel, delivered by I2X. And also, we're very happy and thankful for many different awards and prizes we have won over the last couple of years, which confirm the path we have taken. And that's it. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out for us. We're always looking for, obviously, new customers, for partners, for people who want to maybe join us. And apart from that, obviously very interested in everything related to technology and AI. And also a huge thanks to Fabian and Veronica and the whole Rise of AI team. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for the presentation. Surprisingly, I have questions for you.
No.
So we are based in Germany here. Trade unions are pretty strong also in Europe. I can imagine in the US it's a bit easier to just observe people, but you're kind of building a big brother here. So how does I2X work with trade unions?
So first of all, we're definitely not building a big brother. I would rather compare it to an ABS system in your car that kind of steers you and helps if there is need. That's one. Secondly, we're really not there to kind of observe or to kind of evaluate people, but really to help them. We're a coaching system, a support system. And that's very important. And obviously in nearly every medium-sized and certainly every larger corporation, there are works councils, there are trade unions. They are actually great partners, and certainly some of them are very critical at the beginning. But so far, we could convince 100% of them that this is an amazing solution, because it's exactly not kind of to like a computer saying, oh, somebody should leave a company or not, but really to make them better. One of the largest compliments for me is if a call center manager or location manager says, look, there were 1 or 2 people that were not good enough and that weren't making the cut, and I was already thinking about letting them go, but thanks to I2X, we could bring them to a level and coach them where they actually now are performing so well that they can stay with us long term. And this is exactly the core. We get, like, every single call, every hour we get feedback. We say, think about that, do this, do this. It's like the computer never gets kind of tired, it never gets angry. Also, people appreciate a lot more feedback from computers than they would appreciate it from maybe their manager, who after the 3rd or 4th time maybe isn't that friendly anymore. So there are a lot of advantages.
So I can imagine a lot of people want to call you now and implement I2X, but what are, I mean, you're not IPO'd yet. So what are the use cases you're currently addressing? I mean, would I as a VC could use you in my company, or are you rather targeting other groups?
Theoretically you could. And funnily, I actually have a few VCs who say, like, we have no clue how our analysts and associates are pitching our franchise. So wouldn't it be great to listen and to help them to do that better? But that's certainly not the core of what we do. So the core is we serve medium-sized and large corporations where you have dozens or hundreds or even up to thousands of agents on the phone with the customer. Where oftentimes you also see kind of attrition, so change in the staff of 20, 30, 40% per year, where you have to onboard them, where you have to train them, you have new products, new pricing, new marketing campaigns. And then especially for in areas of telecommunication, we're strong for, for insurances. That's a good use case. For anything related to e-commerce, some actually interesting cases for medicine. For example, now there's a lot of talk, how do you do kind of medical trials? And it's very important that over several weeks, months, or years, you ask every kind of patient or everybody who tests a certain medicine the same question in the same order, and you have hundreds or thousands of them. You have sometimes hundreds of doctors. How do you make this sure? Our solution can make sure that you say that it's like, it tracks like and helps people now say this, say that, and it really measures it so you can do medical trials very well. These would be some of the use cases where we're really good.
All right. Michael, thanks a lot. I can see a lot of analysts listening right now getting nervous and a lot of partners getting very interested and happy. Let's see what happens next
there
week.
was just one funny thing. There was one VC where one partner wanted this for the other partners.
Okay.
It was a very interesting dynamic.
Don't give my partners any ideas, please. All right, Michael, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That was AI in voice, and now we're moving over to AI in text. So we have a high-performing entrepreneur coming up now. He's a world champion in canoeing. He built and scaled an e-commerce company, and then he wanted to solve his own problems by himself. Hence, he founded the company Solvemate. Eric Pfannmüller, welcome.
Thank you, Jasper, for that introduction. All right. Thanks, everyone. So I'm happy to be here, as you said, after Michael Brehm. It's a pleasure for me. So I'm the founder of Solvemate. We are an omni-channel platform for automating customer service, enabling meaningful conversations between end consumers and customers. So a quick agenda, quick intro, why this is important now, how we do it, and then, because probably you've heard a lot about this topic, how we're different. So let's get started with an introduction. My name is Eric, as I said already, and thanks to this introduction from Jasper, in my first life, I have been a professional sportsman. So if you know the Olympic sport of whitewater canoe slalom with green and red poles hanging there, I've trained for more than 10 years and ultimately led the world ranking and became a world champion. Then decided to quit, and now since more than 10 years, founding and scaling high-tech companies. On a private side, I'm a father of 3 kids and enjoy hiking and mountain biking in nature. And I'm a strong believer in the golden rule of treat people the way you want to be treated. So here a quick intro about Solvemate. Founded this company in 2015. We are a software for customer service teams. I will explain in a second what this is about. It's quick and easy to use, not for developers, for business people. Our focus is to SMB and SME, small to medium-sized businesses and enterprise with 10 to 200 service agents. Our clients are happy. That's very clear. We are solving millions of conversations each year. And we are very culture-driven. So you will find online, solvemate.com/culture, our culture manifesto. It's a 15-page constitution, how we interact with us and clients and every stakeholder. Ultimately, we are a very international team. We are from 20 different nationalities. Now you're curious what Solvemate is. So here it is. We are a B2B SaaS company. We leverage machine learning. Our chatbots act as the first line of defense. So for example, if you look on this small animation, you all have seen chatbots, which is the top of the iceberg. After answering a few questions, you come to a solution. Let's watch it again. You answer 1, 2, maybe 3 or 4 questions, and then you will get shown a solution. A solution is what you would get if you would call someone on the phone in customer service. And this is kind of what it is about in customer service automation, to get to solution. In the second example, we have just seen a real-time database request to fetch personalized information that you want to have in customer service. So we just talked about AI, and I'm very often asked, what are you doing there? And so I thought I'd make a top-down view on what this is about. So yes, we are conversation AI. Conversation is the back and forth in text with the end consumer. AI, because we leverage algorithms. And then there is use cases, and we've just heard about another company, i2X, that is also doing conversational customer service. They are helping people on the phone, and they are doing something else than we do, because they are in this agent augmentation thing. So they are helping people getting better. We are deflecting. So it's about making sure that people can help themselves in self-service, and we are not a tool that helps the customer service agent. So why now? We live in a world where there is billions of customer service requests every year. And I know that every one of you has been on hold on the line. And we live in a world of abundance. Time is the new gold. The only thing that I have not to waste is being on hold in any line or waiting for an email to come back. What I want is 2 a.m. at night on Sunday morning, the same customer service that I would get if I would have someone on the phone in real time. But companies can't afford this, to have that 24/7 perfect service response times. So we live in an instant economy. I want to have Netflix and Amazon. Everything shall be instant, so why shall customer service not be instant? Some chart that you know from our good friends from Gartner, you might have seen the hype cycle for artificial intelligence, and you can't see it, it's really small, so I added some arrows. That is chatbots in 2020. And let's look at the development over time, because Gartner is doing this year by year. It started in 2017, 2018. 2019 was the hype cycle of chatbots, according to Gartner. And guess what? 2021 will be the year of the bots. And we have been doing this for years now, but I strongly believe that the majority of customer service leaders will understand that chatbots are no fake anymore. They are through the hype, and there is companies that deliver true value. So I'm excited for the future, and I quickly want to talk about our approach. So people often talk about chatbots, but in customer service automation, it's not about the chatbot. It's about much, much more, and the chatbot is just the tip of the iceberg. It's about user authentication. It's about having a way to know that this user is authenticated as he is in the app or logged into the interface. And what you can do with that, you can connect to a database, which is everything built into our cohesive platform, that you can personalize the experience. And I don't mean say, hello, Eric. I mean fetching real-time information, pre-filling forms, and triggering processes directly on the database, because that's what self-service is about. For the most requests, I don't need a human. I just need to say what I want, and then I want to execute. Also, sometimes humans are needed, and that's important. So if I want to have an agent to process my requests, we are routing to the right agent. This is not automation, this is routing efficiencies, because the agent got all the information, all the context, and I have the right person on the phone. Finally, an agent is always a click away. So agent escalation is, of course, inbuilt, which leads to a lot of benefits in addition, because we are so numbers driven, where we get real-time insights. We, of course, have a CSAT measurement. Ultimately, we force our clients to think about processes, because customer service automation is about process definition and leads to product innovation. Because once you know what your clients want, why don't you feed that back into the product and find out how you can prevent customer service? Because the best customer service is no customer service. And yes, it leads to cost savings, but that's a secondary or tertiary benefit. How do we typically work with clients? Just a very quick note. We are a SaaS tool. We are built for customer service teams. We do a kickoff workshop. We train and configure the bot. The fastest client went live on the same day, but it typically takes a few days of work and a few weeks of time. We go live, we optimize and change the flow of the bot, and ultimately, typically clients understand that they need to route more people to the bot in order to have more of the great customer experience. Clients benefit from, of course, 24/7 support. We guide clients along the way, and a very fast go live. It's not a month's project. It's something that can be done in days. And yes, of course, we have great numbers to show. If you look on our website, there is case studies where clients benefit from deflection and routing. And you might see, well, I've seen a lot of those numbers and people are talking about this. And yes, it's right. So doesn't every vendor promise this? Probably, because it's marketing numbers. But the point is, we are different. You might laugh. We are fundamentally different in how we approach this technology. And I only have 2 more minutes left in this talk, so I only want to scratch the surface of what we did. We've invented a new way of creating a chat flow. Let me repeat that. We've invented a new way of creating the chat flow to find the client's intent. We call it dynamic decision trees, and it is a logical framework of questions and solutions that are fed into a system by humans, by experts of our clients. And out of that, we are dynamically creating a chat flow that doesn't use NLP at all. And don't get me wrong, NLP is awesome, but the NLP is added on top without additional NLP training. I cannot go into the super details here, but you might ask the question, why has nobody else taken that approach yet, if this is so good, Eric? And the answer is, I got a call back in 2015 where I was researching about machine learning algorithms. And that call was from my father, and I was his customer service agent. And he told me, son, I can't send emails anymore. Please help me. So I was doing diagnostic questions, like it is in customer service. You want to find the one out of the 100 intents fast. And I asked a series of multiple choice questions, and I figured out that NLP is great, but there is a big hype around deep learning NLP. And don't get me wrong, again, I'm dictating WhatsApp messages every day. I'm using Siri every day. But for customer service automation, it's not the tool to use. And we just took a different route, and it proves to be a very good one. As a last takeaway from this call, from this presentation, a quick summary of hopefully that you can take with it. There is different ways of approaching a chat flow. So you can have static logic trees. Everyone knows you drag and drop a chat flow in a browser interface. It's hard to maintain for the trainer. And because it is visually there, the effects if the bot trainer leaves the company or this thing gets super big, it's a challenge because there's no algorithm supported. If you do it well, the end user has an awesome experience. If you look on NLU, it's hard to maintain if you've got a lot of intents and utterances and dialects and languages. And we all have had chatbots where you type something in and you get the failure state. But there is no limitation to the chat flow of the human because an algorithm is supporting. Ultimately, you could have guessed that we are green in all these things. It's super fast to set up due to our special algorithm in the setup and the training. We can have as many solutions and intents as you want, and it's as good as other interfaces. And with that, I am done and say thank you for listening.
Thanks a lot, Eric. Thank you. Let's start with some questions again.
Please.
I can imagine you were talking about deflection and actually taking over the work of customer care agents. Now, before we heard about augmenting, this seems to be kind of replacing. Is that what you're doing, or is you merely also augmenting?
You asked the same question to Michael Brehm, and it's interesting because the positive interpretation is I've had customer service agent telling me, you know, I was tired of answering 50th time the day, how can I reset my password and giving order status updates. I am relieved of the robotic work and I can do the true empathetic work. And ultimately, that is increasing the skill set of a customer service agent, which will there be less customer service agent 10 years from now? Probably. But the ones that are there will very clearly have a higher skill set and be more well-paid jobs.
And I can imagine that it feels sometimes VCs should also use your tool. I would say for starting this, you probably are a bit more careful as a new customer. So what are typically, can you explain to us what customers are doing at the beginning? What are typical cases they're using for? And what are the typical customers that really benefit from your tool?
Yeah. So we typically say in order to benefit from automation, you should have minimum 10 to 15 customer service agents. Because don't underestimate the bot. It is some work to maintain. We say a few days of setup and then maybe half a day per week to maintain. So if you have less than 10 agents, you can make the math that you're adding work for yourself. You need to pay license fees because we're a software vendor. And so you need to have thousands of requests in a month to make that work. And then we're industry agnostic. So ultimately, every industry can benefit from automation.
Talking about AI, you already mentioned it a little bit. So what type of AI are you really using in production? And maybe also giving us a little bit of outlook, because you said 21 is the year of the bots. What will happen with AI and bots?
That's a very good question. We got 4 different algorithms in our product. We got the mathematical flow generation algorithm, which is kind of a Bayesian probabilistic system. We turned this algorithm around for training the system. It's kind of the inverse algorithm. We have NLP as addition on top of the DDT algorithm in the chat flow. And we have an NLP clustering algorithm if you're dealing with thousands of conversations to group them for training. What we're going to add in 2021 is we're adding voice as a channel because voice is remaining. And our bots with our structure are determined to go into voice. So that's going to launch in Q1 next year. And we will add no-code flows because customer service teams want to own processes and model them. So we are connecting to the database, and then you can drag and drop if client does this, do this to execute processes, which basically gives the customer service team even more independence from IT and from the scarce resources that they don't have access to.
Cool. That sounds very promising. So in case you're interested, please contact Eric. We have the website in the chat. Thanks very much, Eric, for being here.
Thanks.
All right. Coming up next is Jochen Deister. Jochen is a lawyer by training. We're not really used to this physical thing here. He's a lawyer by training. He's seen both sides, I think Clifford Chance, but also Amazon. And he is now an entrepreneur, and he will tell us more about privacy solutions. Welcome, Jochen.
Thank you. Yeah, welcome. I'm Jochen. I sometimes feel like an artist trapped in the body of a lawyer. And hopefully with AI for privacy, we are taking data protection to the next level. But let me tell you where it all began. Here's back in 2017, I was sitting in my old office with my lawyer hat on, with a number of colleagues, experienced data protection experts, business professionals, and we looked in amazement at the numbers in front of us. This team of experts had just spent 70 hours combined on creating one data protection impact assessment. And for those of you in the know, that's whatever you have to deep dive into the data protection regulation, for instance, whenever you launch an AI solution in your company. And then at that point, the regulator had just lowered the threshold for this data protection impact assessment through the coming of the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, that we were suddenly not just looking at 1, 10, 20 DPIAs, we're looking at that one customer, that one client, hundreds, if not thousands of DPIAs that we had to do. And when we look back at the GDPR, what we think of are these tremendous fines that can, snap the existence of a company within seconds. But we're also looking at a lot of formalistic pieces, documentation, risk assessment, process changes. All that translates in a lot of costs. So we had to find another way. And we also had to find another way because as a lawyer, I could have just sat back and said, hooray, I've got this good clock here, let the times roll and the cash flow in. But that would make it very prone to manual risk. Sometimes other people would miss important aspects. We would have inconsistencies in the approach of solving these issues. So that's when we expedited our idea of creating a data protection software, the Privacy Suite. Because data protection can be achieved so much more efficiently with software. And the Privacy Suite was ready for the GDPR. It collects records of processing, your data processing activities. It reviews them, assesses them on a rules-based system, and already then atomized the time and effort required to do, for instance, a DPIA, but also to comply with all of the other requirements under the GDPR. It's live worldwide. It covers thousands of records of processing at the moment. It's used by a number of customers, and they have expedited their way of managing data. But it's only them. They've created their own rules. The knowledge that's contained in the Privacy Suite is proprietary to those customers. So we thought of something like, what if we could combine the knowledge in the Privacy Suite and make it available to everybody else? So if there's an enterprise that uses a certain AI technology and a new startup with no data protection knowledge whatsoever comes around the corner, how can they too benefit from each other? Obviously, sharing that kind of sensitive data is an absolute no-go. So we had to come up with a smarter way because we believe the smart use of AI needs to benefit society as a whole, needs to benefit more than just one company. And in comes AI for privacy. The idea behind this is that we take a case-based reasoning methodology. So we look at all of the existing processing activities and analyze them to create a case-based. And if a new processing activity comes in, that is then compared with the case base, and the most suitable, the best comparable processing activity is sought and found, presented to the user, who can then say, yeah, that works, or it doesn't work. And the user interaction is then captured and put back into the case base, so that the case base continuously grows, irrespective of whether you're a startup or a multinational enterprise. And we're very proud to have been granted an innovation grant by the German state of Hesse for this project. But how does this look in practice? Let's look at two scenarios. First of all, we're looking at the screening. We're trying to detect the risks inherent to a processing activity. So already the Privacy Suite identifies certain risks based on the rules. With AI for privacy, there's now a new recommendation, a suggestion. There could be another risk here or there, and the user can then review that and either accept it or deny it, and then the risk detection is already improved. Secondly, and that's where it becomes a lot more important, a lot more thrilling even, is the actual assessment of the risks. And not just the assessment of the risk, because lawyers like risk, yeah, cool. But from a business perspective, we want to reduce the risk. We want to do something about them. We want to we want to implement the solution, and if that means we have to overcome the risk, well, then let's go that mile. And that's where AI for privacy can really make a tremendous difference, we believe. So again, we have a processing activity, candidate management with automated analysis of the application, and our rules engine already comes up with a risk score of 5.5 in this scenario. Then the AI for privacy engine looks at the processing activity and suggests additional, what we call, mitigation measures to further reduce the risk. And the user can then take a look at these risks, review them, and choose whether or not to accept them, to implement them, and thus further reduce the risk. And the cool thing is that any kind of user will benefit from the whole global know-how of all of the processes that have implemented risk mitigation measures for this processing activity, for this AI tool. Somebody smart might have thought of something really cool, and it's now available through the engine for all of the users of the privacy suite. So that ultimately the risk would be reduced to 2.3 in this case. But we believe we're just at the beginning. I've worked for Amazon, so we're day one of data protection in a way. AI has tremendous potential for data protection. We're just at the beginning. And here's my one other thing for the road. Because instead of seeing data protection as a blocker for innovation, as many companies perceive it, and we've talked a lot about regulation at this conference as well, instead of blindly pouring concrete into innovative systems by following what the state regulators think is right in their 2-3 years behind attitude, or what data protection officers who cannot be terminated in their company consider as the lowest risk approach. I think we need to disrupt data protection. We need to disrupt it in a smart way, in a balanced way, and approach it from a different perspective and embrace it, so to speak. Because technology will change. We've seen super interesting solutions. And when we look at Fabian's keynote in 2-3 years, they'll be on the, oh, did you remember that? Well, it didn't quite work, or it's been working and it's been replaced by something else. Technology evolves so quickly. So success in the long term is when you treat people with respect, when you treat the personal data in a data-driven world with respect. And that's what we think is going to be the key for long-term success. So make privacy happen. And make it happen not just because you have to, but because you want to, because it does matter. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Jochen.
Yeah.
That sounds like a very, very relevant topic. Maybe starting off a bit easier. How do you start with your product? It sounds like you have a lot of regulation that you have to read, that you have to implement, that you have to put into some kind of software kit. Is it people-based? Is it AI-based?
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Jasper. And that's one of the, when we look in the glass bowl, where would we improve the software? The intake at the moment is completely manual. I mean, we can read databases and match the data fields to data elements to data categories, but it's a very manual process. And I know there's a number of companies out there who try to automate this intake process, and that's going to be the next big thing. If we look at the whole food chain of data protection, to automate the intake, then automate the data protection assessment, what our core technology does, and then ultimately also automate the implementation, what's going on with it.
But at least you have the data already in there. I guess that's an edge. How would you approach then a new customer? Probably everybody has a different AI solution. It's customized. People do their things. Do you have a general solution for them, or would you first go in, talk to them, adjust your tool according to what they're doing?
My customers are lawyers or data protection officers So they work with Excel. And for them, AI is if then, and if they're advantageous, else. So we're starting at a very, very low level. Typically, if we're lucky, they have their data in one central database so that we can implement it and input it in our tool. What we usually find is data is completely decentralized, and we have several ways of putting the data into the tool, but we see the Privacy Suite as the one-stop solution for data protection at any given customer. So not only do they do the risk assessment there, but they would also manage their data protection agreements. They would cover access requests by individuals, but it all depends on putting in the right data or getting the right data into the tool. And at the moment, that's a very manual process. And AI for many is in that community is a threat rather than something cool.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from the audience from Jochen. I don't know, Jochen.
Jochen, that's
Jochen, are you here? You want to ask it yourself? No, but are your customers ready for AI? Aren't they just moving away from Excel sheets to software?
That's a big challenge. So we have a lot of convincing to do, a lot of uphill battles, but ultimately with the more and more data-driven world, there's just no way that people can continue managing it in Excel sheets or even within like physical files anymore. So we have great customers on board. We have very innovative companies, and those are the early adopters in this world. If we come to the normal customer with our AI solution, well, we might have lunch, but that's it.
And, maybe one last question. When you look at the space and all these people now playing with AI, working with AI, earning money with AI, what are the typical easy to cover mistakes people are doing? And what are the things where you would say you definitely need a lawyer? That's not as easy. But is there something we can all avoid that many people do?
Yeah, I think we need to change the mindset a bit. So we need to, at the moment, we all see privacy and AI as like two opposite topics, and they're like trains running against each other, because what I feel a lot of times people see it black and white on both sides. That's what I said. The data protection officers or lawyers in the companies, they're so risk averse. Whereas on the other side, with the folks in the AI community, are very entrepreneurial, very innovative. So this mindset needs to change, and these things need to be combined. We had in a talk earlier today the double PhD problem, that we need to combine these sort of controversial disciplines in order to make it happen. Because if you're creative, if both sides move to each other, there are a lot of solutions, and it's not as dark. The world's not as dark when data protection comes around the corner. You just need to be a little bit more creative and maybe a little bit more risk-friendly also on the lawyer side.
Glad we have people reading this stuff, and tools make it easier. Thanks so much for being here, Jochen.
Yeah, my pleasure, Jasper. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next coming up, still on stage, I'll just stick here, I guess, is Clemens Vienneckel. He is from the Mirantix incubator. He studied at St. Gallen University, and he is truly visionary in terms of hyperscale AI. So he wants to help us to manage unstructured data with unsupervised learning. Please welcome Clemens. Kann ich klatschen?
Hi, thanks for that introduction, Jasper. So, as you said, I'm one of the alumni of the Robotic ecosystem. Happy to be here. Thanks for organizing this great event. And I'm happy today to talk a bit about our work at CS Search. We are a young software company, now about 10 people in Berlin. But let me actually start with a problem that probably a lot of you guys know is when you're talking about unstructured data management, you probably are aware of this problem from sorting your holiday pictures. When you only have time dimension available in order to find data, then it can take hours and hours in order to find the relevant stuff. And we essentially address this problem like in the industrial setting where the problem is like the same, but in a much, much larger scale. So companies who want to build really robust computer vision, like in self-driving, start to create data systems with billions and billions of frames to train their models. And working with this data still remains a big hassle. What do we mean with that? When we look at structured data, you typically have like a whole bunch of nice data management systems, Elasticsearch, Postgres, and all of these databases. And you can just like query the data, retrieve whatever you need, understand what's in it. You can even check if it's biased or not, build a dashboard, maybe even do some nice machine learning. On the unstructured data side, what we see here, say a recording from a car, there's no such thing. So in order to work with that kind of data, you essentially have to work with the raw files and with the actual like direct recordings. And what are engineers typically interested here when they work with this data? One, they want to understand the content of the data, so what's actually in it, to know if and for what they can use it to train their models. Or two, if they have understood that, they want to retrieve very specific sequences of that data in order to then forward this to their training or their labeling workflow. Like, is this really like a big problem? The answer is yes. If you talk to companies working on like industrial computer vision, it turns out that up to 3/4 of engineering time is actually spent on so-called data handling activities, which is like all the activities taking data from raw data from storage and eventually using it in the model. And this takes so much time because, and I will go into the workflow in a second, because the interaction with the data is so manual. So what Search does is essentially supercharging computer vision development by introducing a new way of accessing raw data. What does it mean? We build software that runs on the customer's data lake and ingests raw data and essentially builds on top of that data lake a very, very lean layer of metadata that then can be accessed by the engineers via an award-winning graphical interface or API. What do the engineers do with the data? They then essentially can just use the metadata to query, aggregate, understand, slice and dice the data for annotation, training, and evaluation of their models. How is the metadata generated? There's multiple ways to do it. One, you can run algorithms that detect certain events in the data, of which we have a couple already pre-trained for specific use cases. You can also use metadata that already exists. Most of our customers have inferences from their models, have manually created metadata, but they're still not able to search for that metadata on all of the stuff that they have recorded. And Search essentially enables to ingest that other metadata and add it to your search. We have like, unfortunately this should be a video, but like, yeah, so we have a nice API that like, and GUI that enables you to just query directly the sequences that you're interested in, and you will get like these exact frames. So let's take a quick look at the workflow of how it looks today, so to understand better what we're doing. So typically you have data acquisition, then you ingest the data, and most of the engineering time actually goes into the data handling, then forwarding some data to annotation, and only like a minority of the time being spent on actual algorithm development and training and validation. With Search, we try to accelerate that cycle by at least an order of magnitude and increase engineering productivity by essentially adding automatically generated metadata and then using Search tooling to speed up all of the search, aggregation, and selection tasks that now take up so much of the engineer's time, hence expanding the time that they can spend on the algorithms, and hence overall accelerating this development cycle. Why are companies not doing this today? Oftentimes, a lot of the companies that we're working with have some metadata, often basic, but they're still not able to search for it on scale, or they haven't started creating more metadata. The reason is that if you have billions and billions of frames, adding metadata can create a big mess because you're storing a lot of similar and redundant information and have a lot of emptiness for all of the other frames that don't have metadata, and putting this into existing common database systems turns out to be like very, very slow and inefficient. So what we've come up with when we looked at this problem is we essentially introduce a new data model for the metadata that we put on top. So when you think about an event that's happening in a video stream, like in a car, here a lane change, instead of saving metadata for every single time frame, we use an algorithm that only detects start and end point of that metadata of that event and essentially store that in our metadata base. As a result, we have implemented a new way of accessing the data through this interval matching logic. What does it mean? In a classical database, which you see here below, you would have metadata for every single frame and a lot of redundancy and emptiness. And then when you retrieve data, it takes a lot of time. It's incredibly slow if you have like thousands and hours of data, even just on like 100 hours of data, and can take many, many minutes to retrieve specific sequences. So we've developed like a model that essentially uses only the start and end points and matches the intervals where they intersect, which is like not only incredibly much more efficient in storing the metadata because it's just like much less and doesn't create any redundancy, it's also incredibly more efficient to retrieve it. And when I say more efficient, we're talking about 3 orders of magnitude, which can be really meaningful if you have like many, many hours of data that you're looking at. So we're already working with like a lot of, we are only like about a year and a half old, but we're already working with a lot of companies. We have like run a series of pilot projects, or we have like a smaller license integration going with the first customer. And we have like many, many companies who are really excited about the product, already testing it, and are like having the engineers on our platform to try it out. We have also an open source version. I have a QR code for that later, which is essentially like you can try out CS Search for free for academic use. If you know of NewScenes, a very famous public data set, you can sign up on our website and just look at this data set through the lens of like accessing it on a semantic level. We have seen a lot of great interest for that, a couple of hundred signups in the last couple of weeks, because even for just a few hours of data like NewScenes, it's incredibly useful to just search for many, many semantic dimensions and get the exact timeframes just in an instant. But this is by no means limited to autonomous driving and robotics, where we mostly started. We now have like first prototypes running for other computer vision use cases, mostly working also with smaller players here in Berlin, ranging from retail checkout to drones to plant inspection and even human gestures. Because the problem that we're solving is really just retrieving sequences that are associated with like semantic dimensions. And this is like a problem that probably everyone working on a larger data set for computer vision has already encountered. As a next step, we're looking towards also really establishing CS Search as a middle layer between data users and data producers. For that, we're starting to establish a marketplace for data annotation transaction, where we have a couple of leading players in the field already sign up who like want to participate in this workflow. So they essentially like can look at a place where customers just put out data that they want to get annotated and already know what's in it because we have produced metadata about it, and then can get offers from leading annotation providers with a single click from our product. In 10 years, we really envision CS Search to become the standard gateway for sensor data and to enable a whole range of computer vision applications that will affect many industries. And we have built a very, very strong team from top-tier institutions and companies. My co-founder Mark has done award-winning research, particularly on data-driven development at ETH in Zurich. If you are interested to learn more about what we're doing, like feel free to scan this QR code. You can sign up for a demo version of our product and look whether this might be interesting to you. If you catch yourself looking at file-to-file data in your development, we definitely should talk. Thanks.
Clemens, thank you. That was way ahead of time. I hope everybody was following. I was following. I was really excited. Thank you very much. What I understood so far is you're basically helping everyone that is working in the field of computer vision. But to start with, there is a certain metadata required. So if I come up with any new random thing that you haven't been working before, you would have to set up that first. So everybody who wants to jump on this product now. Yeah. Okay. So what are the areas that you can serve right now specifically?
So so most of our work has been focused really in kind of like different sized robots, which include self-driving cars. So there we have already essentially like a series of models who detect certain metadata in the data automatically. But in the midterm, and I think thanks also for asking that question, most of the time the customers are actually like more excited of also adding whatever models they have to the system because they typically produce already a lot of metadata. Either they add it manually or they have their models running and they want to have this metadata and connect it to everything that they have recorded in a meaningful way. And there's just like no solutions out there to do this, which then even for ground truth data, so they get back labels from the companies that do them manually, and even then this just sits in files and they have no means of relating this to their raw data. So actually I want to enable customers to build this layer of metadata in the most meaningful way for them possible.
Okay, understood. And you said it's 75% of the time of a data scientist. What are the data scientists experiencing right now that are using your tool? That sounds like they must be a bit like what Michael and Eric described. They must be totally relieved now.
Yeah, like ideally for the first like trial users that are testing this out, we want to replace as many kind of data interaction activities that they do now essentially with the raw files, with essentially just running a command in the API or a query, like with a certain metadata associated to it, and hence essentially avoiding people to go to the server and download a batch, but instead just like working entirely on this metadata layer. So our core KPI is here really like how much engineering time we're really replacing. And for that, like the core dimension is in terms of like so we work there really closely with the customers as well in terms of like, what are your engineers doing today? Like there's a lot of overlap. There's also quite some differences between companies. What data are you looking for and why typically? And essentially figuring this out and then seeing how they would like implement these workflows with our tool.
And since you addressed the open source community, what are you hoping to gain from them? What would be your expectation, but also your ask maybe to the people?
Sorry, I have to like do a quick correction here. So so the version that we have released for free is not open sourced yet, at least. So not that I cited wrongly here. We are thinking about open sourcing part of the technology stack as well. The version that we have out now is free to use. We are hoping to establish this new way of really storing metadata about sequential data as a standard, which is also why we are very actively looking into making essentially a core part of this data infrastructure open source. Stay tuned for more to come in 2021 on this.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Clemens. Thanks for that.
Cheers.
All right, we're now moving over to another virtual guest, I think dialing in from the beautiful city of Leipzig. Christian Pichnik from Wandelbots. He recently raised 26 million euros, if I'm correct, from very reputable fund from Israel and London, 83 North and Microsoft and others. And he actually has robots working. So this is a nice move over from the previous topic. So very glad to have you here. Welcome.
So, hi everyone. My name is Christian Pichnik. I'm CEO and co-founder of a startup. We are based in Dresden called Wandelbots, and basically we are active in the field of industrial robotics, and we are providing a technology which basically enables everyone, regardless of their technical background, regardless of their education, regardless of their cultural background, to actually program industrial robots. And I was asked if I can talk a little bit about also some backgrounds and challenges in the robotic market. And this is extremely interesting because if you look at the market of industrial robots, everyone thinks like, and you can read this everywhere, that robots are capturing the world. They make us all unemployed, and it's a fact that the robot market in the past approximately doubled every 5 years. So the market is growing continuously. However, if you look at actually how many robots are currently deployed globally compared to human workers, you will actually find that less than 1% actually of all jobs globally in manufacturing, which could be done by robots, really in manufacturing, are actually done by robots. So there is a lot of potential to grow. And actually we are active in a field where the perceived advancements in technology and the reality is extremely different. the problem is today, basically every robot manufacturer, every robot provider provides its own proprietary technology stack. And we're actually talking about technology stacks, programming languages that directly comes from the 80s. So one interesting example would be Denso, one of the largest robot makers. They've decided in 2019, last year, to introduce BASIC as their programming language in order to basically make their robots do something. And for the end customer currently, basically the manufacturing companies and the vast majority still today are automotive or electronic companies. Deploying robots is rather expensive. So you spend in average 75% of the overall total cost of ownership comes with programming robots. And then those jobs can only be done by very specialized experts. So those are usually employed by external companies called system integrators. And this makes it super complex, and you can barely reuse any code of you have deployed on one robot. And finally, they are all rather disconnected. And our company basically has worked over the past years on a technology I would like to present you right now. So to basically sum that up very quickly, because we don't have too much time, right? So we have a technology where you basically can show a robot a task by example using an input device, which is tracked in 6 dimensions plus a little bit more of metadata, such as acceleration. And based on the demonstration, our software is able to create a model of the application itself. So it's not a one-to-one repetition, it's an abstraction, a model generation based on data using using many different methods coming from mathematical optimization up to really machine learning, so deep neural networks, and this gets better, of course, with more examples, but already right now the first sketches are really good. And then you have a very easy to use user front end, basically to adjust and fine tune what was generated by the software, which then later on is again part of the feedback loop. So with every single installation and every fine tuning, basically it gets better. And then what you can do at the end is generate code for specific robot platforms. So you can generate code for KUKA, ABB, universal robots, whatsoever, in the host language of the individual robot. So what we can do with that is basically go, let's say, typical gluing applications, grinding, welding, basically reduce the time to programming up to 70 times faster than with conventional text-based programming methods, and basically enable non-programmers, so non-trained personnel who are task experts, to really do it themselves. And then besides that, on the left side, what you can see is basically the fact on how connected robots are today. So there are systems which are called PLCs. So those are basically systems managing more complex systems, entire cells or part of the production line. And the robot has an interface to that. So communication is always point by point, very individual code. What we can do is generate the code that automatically connects robots. And we are very closely working, for example, with Volkswagen and Amazon on what is called the digital production platform, as well as Microsoft on Azure and the open manufacturing platform. And this basically has an automatic gateway to capture the data of robots in production in the first place, to enable more advanced intelligent robotics in the future. The typical companies we work with very quickly come from not only automotive, but a big portion, as well as pharmaceutical, as well as semiconductors, electronics, metal, food, whatsoever. And then our technology is applicable for many types of customers. So from a small bakery with 17 employees in Görlitz up to large tier automotives such as Volkswagen. And one of the coolest presentations we had in the past was with Microsoft, where we basically presented our entire technology stack to the Microsoft board. And Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, was able to teach the robot a PVC sealing process over a distance of 8,000 kilometers. So he was using the trace pen in Redmond. The robot was in Germany, and he was able to process stably, program that in a very short amount of time. And I would like to finish my talk with maybe one very quick example from a Volkswagen production facility, where you really can see the power of the technology plus AI in its whole. So this is a video in the what is called end of line inspection. And what you can, and basically what people need to do is like check whether a car was assembled correctly, especially now where every single configuration of the car has a carbon dioxide check. What you need to check is whether, for example, the liquid in a can is correct, whether the correct labels are glued. And this is today entirely done manually. And in order to do this adaptively with a vision-based system, you have more than 800 positions you would like to check on such a car. So what you can do is just point at the object you would like to check with the trace pen, and the entire robot control is generated with just one button press. And the robot is taking pictures, transferring this to a back-end system in a cloud environment, where you can label those pictures and actually define what parts of the picture define whether a part was assembled correctly or not. And yes, I'm running a little bit over, but this video is very quickly over. And this basically trains a neural network. And because the pictures are always taken from the same angle, or those are always the same objects with a similar lighting, it only takes 20 to 50 reference pictures in most cases to get a 99% of accuracy. And the coolest thing is that you can share both the learnings from the robot, so the robot control, as well as the image processing across all of your factories globally. And this is just one example. So thank you very much, and eager to hear your questions.
Thank you very much. Totally fine. You ran over time. I put you in the wrong city, and coming from Bremen, it would be like if somebody put me into Hamburg. So sorry for that. Dresden is much more beautiful.
No.
So question regarding your use cases. It looks like you're expanding the market for robot usage because you put it, giving the last example, you put it in a field where human were in there. But then also you said something about faster training. So what's the field you're most active in?
So traditionally speaking, of course, the let's say advanced and mature automation companies, especially in the automotive sector, so companies like Volkswagen, BMW, whatsoever. But there are many companies who now step into robotics, also large companies, especially chemistry and pharmacy is a big part where robots are not very common today, which are now stepping into this game. And then there are many small and medium-sized enterprises who look into robotics for the last 5-6 years, but what's missing basically is a technology that enables them to do adjustments very quickly to really get access to the technology in the first place.
What I really liked was you can do remote training of robots. Is it also remote maintenance, or is that the key thing?
You can do it remotely. Currently, I think all of our installations, it's done on site, right? You would need a more advanced IT infrastructure inside shop floors in order to facilitate that. We are part of the 5G Lab Germany, very heavily also working with low latency and 5G campus network solutions, which in the future will open up those use cases. There are a few, but they will come in the future, especially now in those times of COVID where you would rather do things remotely.
Yeah, that was what I was referring to. That sounds highly promising, also with the edge technology in 5G. When you look into the future of robotics, are you actually the ones enabling innovation, or are there other fields complementary to you? What's happening there in robotics?
It's a very broad question. There are many things happening in robotics. Sadly, really innovations on the software side of things are very rare, right? So there is a lot of going on, especially when we look into the AI sector in terms of perception, what is called, for example, bin picking, where you enable a robot to pick arbitrary pieces out of boxes, right? But that's only one portion of the entire automation solution. So what to do with those things, how to interact with the environment, and so on and so forth. So we are still far away where you really could speak of cognitive robotics, where robots make good decisions. And also there are so many legal aspects which are currently hindering really deployments of those solutions, that I got a bit more pessimistic when it comes to timelines. But the path is really clear, right? In the next at least 10 years, we will see a vast majority of robots who don't necessarily need to be programmed, but using different technologies coming from the sector of machine learning in order to become more autonomous.
Cool. That sounds like very exciting times ahead. Thanks so much, Christian, for dialing in. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, and have a great rest of the event. Thanks for having me.
All right, next one and last one, but obviously not least one. Coming up, Silas Delvig from Cognigy. So we are going back into customer care, enterprise level, and he will tell us more how Cognigy is helping companies to make this whole experience so much better. Please give him a warm welcome.
All right, let's kick it off. Very warm welcome and good evening from my side here from Düsseldorf. My name is Silas, or Silas. I'm responsible for partner management in EMEA. Cognigy is actually a German company headquartered here in Düsseldorf. That's where all our developers are. But we do have a global footprint. So we also have offices in San Francisco, Sydney, and we also cover APAC with offices in Seoul and Tokyo because we do have global clients. Today, I will speak about how conversational AI will improve your customer service experience. And in order to do that, let's just take one step back and understand the term conversational AI. We heard it before, and you're all experts in AI, but conversational AI still is a bit fuzzy to some people. In the end, it's a technology that enables machines or backends to interact with human beings via natural language. And language, as we're honest, voice is the one true superpower we as humans have, how we differentiate. And yeah, if you think about it, that's the ideal of my childhood. I'm not that old, but still he was my idol. He was actually able to do that. So Michael could just talk to his watch, talk to his car, and yeah, tell a command, and then an action was triggered. And the software behind did clearly understand what does Michael want and what do I have to do. And to bring that to life, that is not easy, and that wasn't easy. So scientists and business people tried for years, and it took a long time. So don't be afraid. It's my screen, not yours. It's the first view of MS-DOS. Just to give you an idea of how user interfaces were looking like back in the days. And at that time, if you wouldn't know the exact command line, you wouldn't get anything done. And even if you wouldn't use a command line, you wouldn't get done much. It slightly improved when Apple and Windows came up with a visual interface, which you could click, which was a bit more embellished, good looking. It got better and better with Windows 95, 98. I bet that a lot of people bet on XP, and you can doubt whether that was progress. But it introduced dynamic tiles and movement and updates. And last but not least, Apple completely changed the game, was taking user interface to a completely new level with gestures. But at some point, you cannot make an icon nicer or more intuitive. The next step is just voice, and voice really is the next front end and the core DNA of Cognigy and basically our founding reason. So we use voice to automate customer service for leading enterprises. And our key pitch, or why companies are buying us, is very simple. We enable them with outstanding customer service at lower costs on the one hand side, and it's managed by them. So our platform is really about enabling business users, give them the power, and decrease the dependency on developers. You can, of course, still fully code on our platform, but the main objective is to fully enable business users out there. And how do we do that? It's very simple. It's one of the key reasons why our customers like us. We have a low-code, no-code graphical editor. So literally everyone can use it to build a virtual agent within seconds. You can drag it, you can drop it, you can just insert things, and it ships with 22 languages for now, and we're adding new languages constantly. And we also have pre-built integrations, and that's a really powerful tool set because we have standard integrations to Facebook Messenger, to Google, to SAP, to Salesforce. So any backend system where the data is stored, we can securely connect it. And you as a business user, as a team leader of a call center or a customer service team, because you guys have the knowledge, what do customers say, what do they want, why do they call, you can build your own meaningful bots within seconds in any specific channel. And that is the true power of the tool, to really enable you to make it easy with drag and drop features. In reality, how does it look like on a specific customer case? We don't really differentiate whether it's text or voice, even though voice is way more powerful. We have connected more than 30 channels. So these are just some examples of the channels we have connected because they're the most convenient one. They're the most convenient ones. So for example, WhatsApp is used by almost 60 million Germans, similar for Facebook Messenger, or whether it's more business focused with Slack or Microsoft Teams, just to give you an idea. And these are pre-built. So if you become a Cognigy client, you got them from day one. And on the other side, when it comes to voice, we can hook into any zipline, Genesys, Cisco, Avaya. So these are technology partners of ours. So we can fully integrate into a call center. And then the logic you built in our software as a business users can then be outplayed in the specific channel, meaning you build the info once, the authentication and so on, because it's of course important. And then it's channel specific output. So if you have a request about your bill on WhatsApp, we can use the power features WhatsApp offers. So like widgets, galleries, buttons, and you can even send the invoice after authentication via the number as a PDF via voice. That of course doesn't make any sense. In that case, we would then just have the output via what is the invoice amount, when is it due, has it been paid. So it's channel specific, but the logic you build it once and you save an enormous amount of time. I've seen before some people are always keen on numbers, and here are some across industry, across clients. So roughly we can say 3 out of 10 calls can fully be deflected, 30%. And we also see a remarkable increase in agent productivity. And that is an important point because Cognigy is really about empowering agents and relieving them because it's a scarce resource. They have to do a lot of topics at the same time. And we really want to empower them because we didn't fly as a human mankind to the moon 55 years ago that a human being on the phone line has to reset a password today. That is something a bot can do within a second on any channel at any time on any channel, which is convenient for for a customer in the end. And when it comes to that, we are fully agnostic. So we just integrate what's convenient for our clients or respectively for the clients of our customers. Talking about customers, we clearly address enterprises. These are some references here, but we have more clients than that. One very easy example is Lufthansa. They really face a challenging year. I don't have to explain it, I believe, but they are getting overrun with requests. What about my flight? What about security regulations in Italy? Can I take hand luggage to the flight? What about my child? I'm a father myself, so does my child have to wear a mask? And all these questions in various languages at various time points on various channels want to be answered in real time. And that is something we enable Lufthansa to do and also other clients. Obviously, I work in sales, so I love Cognigy and I love working at Cognigy, but it's not just me speaking nicely about Cognigy. It's also Gartner. We've been awarded a couple of times. We are a cool vendor, and we also have some nice reviews from our clients, which are very happy with us. And also when it comes to our NLU, so really the key algorithm behind our software, we outperform IBM, Microsoft, and Google because we do that with a very specialized approach. And yeah, we do that with a fully motivated team. So please feel free to shoot some questions and challenge me and challenge us. Everybody's more than invited to go to cognigy.com/start. You get the full feature set for 30 days, no hook. We just need your name and your email, and you can get started and build your own virtual agent and give it a try. Thanks.
All right. Thanks very much. Can I say Silas or Silas?
Silas. It's
Silas.
Just, for English, yeah.
Since this field is getting more and more crowded of different approaches and products, what would you say is that's pretty impressive to be Gartner Cool vendor and outperforming all the other ones? What would you say is the edge of your company or your product?
Well, main reason for customer buying us is we also offer on-prem. So we offer SaaS dedicated on-prem, and the majority of our clients really wants on-prem, especially in terms of GDPR. That is also something we can fully guarantee, especially for insurances and especially German companies. And yeah, the visual editor is like the key feature we have because it really enables business users and decreases dependency from developers because that's a very scarce resource everybody wants to have, but not everybody gets.
Understood. And since you spoke about your outperforming NLU, you have to train that, obviously, if you do on-prem. And if you very highly comply with GDPR, how would you cross-train those models, or you simply don't?
Well, we have the NLU, how it ships.
Yeah.
It always has a high performance, and then it learns by itself, and it's fully visualized. So that is something you can export and then adjust. But we have an intent trainer where the business users can select, okay, that's an intent which hasn't been understood. And then you can map it to the intent. And that's basically how it learns every day incrementally, step by step.
Got it. And there's one question I forgot to ask a previous speaker, Eric, but there are probably some things that such an AI can never answer. What would be your feeling? What are the cases where you say, no, we step away from that, or the engine just doesn't do it?
Yeah, I mean, let's reference Knight Rider. The AI was able to understand irony and these kind of things. And that is nothing an AI can do. So that's also my point of relieving agents. Whenever it's a complex case, too much words, irony, and these kind of things required, we always have escalation paths in our tool. You should always talk to a human. If it's repetitive, it's stupid, administrative, then a bot can do the work.
How many languages do you do?
Currently, it's 22.
Okay. So covering all Europe, I guess.
Yeah, we do cover Europe, except for some, let's say, niche languages. For example, like Slovenia, just 2 million people. But if there's a Slovenian client, we can integrate it quite quickly.
And since Eric made the statement that next year will be the year of the bots, what would you say is happening next year from your perspective, from the Cognigy perspective? What are the innovations we can expect?
That's a good thing. It's a good question.
What do you have in the pipeline for your product, maybe?
So voice is becoming bigger and bigger. It's very techy features like specialized features, barge in, and these kind of things, neural voices, because we're agnostic. So we integrate with Yandex, Nuance, Azure, and Amazon, for example. So you can pick any neural voice. And for example, we have a prospect with Swiss German, very special, and that will develop. So neural voices will develop, and then we're open to integrate it.
All right, cool. Thanks a lot, Silas. Thanks for your time. That was really interesting at the end. And if you want to reach out to Silas, please find his contacts in the app or in the chat.
Great, thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, everyone. This is the end of the hybrid area. It's not the end of Rise of AI. Now we have on the main stage more about robots, if you like that topic. And there will be obviously the final speech. It was a great pleasure to host you here with all the guests. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed yesterday and today. I learned a lot of things. Thanks so much for listening, and good night.